To the Michelle Meow Show at the Commonwealth Club of California. I'm John Zipper, the club's Vice President of Media and Editorial, and the co-host of the Michelle Meow Show at the club. We hope you are staying safe and are well wherever you are, and we look forward to seeing you in person one day again at the Commonwealth Club's headquarters in San Francisco. But until that happens, we are doing all of our programming online. This is the latest in more than 330 online programs the club has produced in the past 8 months. You can find all of our programming in the past, as well as future programs that we have scheduled at commonwealthclub.org. Now, if you're watching us live on YouTube, go ahead and use the chat feature on the YouTube page there to post questions for our guests, and we'll work some of them into our conversation. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Michelle Meow. She is the producer and host of The Michelle Meow Show and a member of the Commonwealth Club's Board of Governors. Good to see you again, Michelle.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you to all of you who are joining us. I'm so excited about this conversation. It's like a page out of, not a page, an actual chapter out of my own life. Oh, those days of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, joining my mom to sell hot donuts, and then going to school and doing people's homework for some side cash. Yeah, that was actually a part of my life at one point. Today, we are going to discuss Takeout Girl, a film that tells the story of Tara, a young Chinese-American girl who works side jobs to help out her working-class family, including delivering food for her mom's Chinese restaurant. Tara ends up taking on a dangerous side hustle, though, for a drug dealer in order to lift her family out of poverty. What do you think? The American dream? We'll talk all about it. We have the director, the co-writers, and the star of the film with us. But before we begin the program, let's take a look at the trailer.
Focus on school. I wasted so much time learning that this place has nothing to offer a young woman.
How am I gonna set tables, clean, and deliver my bike?
The dude next door fixed Auntie's car this morning, and I'll just cover you while you're gone.
Somebody order Chinese food?
Do me a favor, take that shit to the back. I don't know who ordered that Chinese food, but your money is back there.
Is it worth it?
It's well worth it.
Side hustle.
Hey. Moving Lalo's shit?
I don't trust you, but Lalo does trust you.
What if I go to the cops?
I'll burn the place down with everyone in it.
You know money fixes everything. I know how to get to the cash.
This is what you wanted, right? Now deal with it.
You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. I know what Lalo's about.
Takeout Girl, stay out of here. There's animals in here. They break from their leash.
Please you step out the car, ma'am.
Sir, I
asked you to step out the car, ma'am.
Let's welcome Hassani Johnson, who's co-writer and director of Takeout Girl, and the star, Hetty Wong, who's also co-writer. Welcome, everyone, to the program. Thank you so much for this fantastic film. Hassani, this is your first feature film. And how did you and Hetty get together, since it's based off of a true story? In fact, it's based off of true accounts of Hetty's life. But how did you two come together to put this film, to tell this story?
Good question. Hetty and I connected because I have a little bit of a reputation for making films that don't have a lot of assets behind them look like they do. And Lauren Lee, the gentleman who plays Saren, told Hetty about this specific skill I have, and I think it piqued Hetty's interest, and she reached out and we met up. So things tend to work out. She actually asked me to lunch, and when I met her, I knew I had a film before I even read the script. Like Hetty's personality, like the way she walks, the way she talks, the way she dresses, I knew I could make a film about her doing anything, like mowing the lawn, and it would be interesting. So,
oh, that's awesome. Hetty, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, it sounds like you've been working on this idea, this story, or telling the story of your life for quite a while.
Right. I'm not the most articulate person,
But right now, all I have to say is thank God I met Hisani. Thank God, because before I met him, I was just trying to figure out like, man, how am I going to do this? And I really thought of it as more of on a student film level, And then once I met with Hisani, it just became so much more. The movie looked so much bigger. And then with him rewriting it, because, when I was writing it, I was very scared to write a movie that was too big to make on my own. But with Hisani, he knew, what he could do. And so the rewrites were a little bigger because he knew what he could do with a lot of the shots. So I'm really blessed to have met him. And then we're here today and I'm so excited.
Well, we're glad you're both here. And we're assuming now most of the people watching us, watching this interview here, have not seen the movie yet. So I'm going to ask you both to kind of give us, tell us the basic synopsis. And Michelle and I have seen it, and we'll try not to do too many spoiler giveaways here. But first, maybe this is a question for Hisani. One of our viewers asks, where can I stream the movie in the US? So if someone wants to see this, what should they do?
Well, right now we're still on the festival circuit. So you're going to have to catch it at, I think our next film festival is Silver State in Las Vegas. And that's all region blocked. So you can only watch it if you're like within 80 miles of the area. There's Silver State, there's Green Bay International, there's Beloit International. And
wait. Green Bay International, as in Green Bay, Wisconsin?
Yes, sir. I am originally from Milwaukee, and I have a great relationship with that film festival.
I'm from Green Bay, so glad.
Yeah, you're a cheesehead. We found your embarrassing secret. No, I love Wisconsin. Yeah. I love it very much. I love Green Bay.
And I love Milwaukee. Okay, we paid all of our dues. So people should keep an eye then on their local film festivals and look for it there.
Yeah, if you wanted to know where we're currently screening,
Great.
The best place to go would be Instagram. It's Takeout Girl Feature Film on Instagram, or you can check my Instagram, at Hisani J, HISONNI And I tend to keep people aware of where we're screening. But it looks like we will have a great distributor at the end of this month, and the film should come out mid to late 2021.
Great. So fantastic. Hetty, now when people go to watch this, what's the basic story that they should prepare themselves for?
Well, the basic story is it's just about a young girl, college dropout, and she's helping her mom with the Chinese restaurant. And when you're young and in a certain environment, you feel like if you only could get some more money, it could solve so many things. And so as she was making her delivery runs, she runs into, a local OG, and he gives her an opportunity to make more money. And she takes it because when you're young, you take shortcuts.
Okay, OG. I know what it stands for. I grew up in Stockton, California, but
there you go.
For.
Yeah, I think on our when we write about, I think they call him like a local, but he's really just a local, gangster, but OG because he's been in the game for so long,
Yeah.
So
yeah, the original.
Right, original. Season.
So, yeah, I love this film. I opened up with the fact that it's nostalgic for me. I really resonate with it. Especially, in Hollywood films these days, or for a long time, Asians played, or people of color, I should say, play very stereotypical roles. And in fact, if we want to talk about, the most successful movie with an Asian, lead, or talking about Asian issues, Crazy Rich Asians, which, not all Asians are super crazy rich. But here's this film, that tells about a working class Asian family, struggling to make ends meet and sharing space or cohabitating, right, with other races. Why did you want to tell the story? I know that we know that it's based off of your true, life, but what was most important for you about it in wanting to share this narrative, this story about people of color?
Well, I just wanted to tell the truth, really, the truth of, experiences of me and the people around me, the Asians around me. Crazy Rich Asians was such a fun movie. But when it came out, because there's so little representation in Hollywood of Asians, when one big Asian movie come out, everybody just kind of assume like, oh, our Asians are crazy rich. And then I look at my other Asians around me, I'm like, yo, when did we become crazy rich? Because I remember when, growing up, we was all like refugee immigrants coming from a third world or developing country. And we was, we was all working class. Like, when did we but Asia have developed really rapidly during the 90s, and Asians being like 5 to 6% of the US population, unless you're stuck in Oakland, Chinatown, San Francisco, Chinatown, you're really going to be interacting with other people in the communities, other, Black, brown, and especially south of the 10 in LA, it's mostly Black and brown, because of the history of the US and California, certain pockets are going to be one demographic. And, so to me, I was just speaking really from the truth of where we are.
Hassani, you want to add to that?
I do want to add to that.
Yeah.
When Hetty shared the premise of the film with me and I met her, I knew I had something special, but it also tapped into a little bit of something inside of me that was very angry. I remember it was 2015 and Trump was running for re-election, and he referred to Hispanic immigrants or immigrants from Mexico as bad hombres. And it hit me like a wave from the past, because I remember it was the early 90s and I was being called a super predator. And because of those words, I watched all of my friends and all of my role models slowly disappear off of my block. And how it ties into Takeout Girl is the motivation of our main character was very much the same as the motivation of all of those men in my life that disappeared from my block as a young kid because someone called us super predators. And I knew the same thing was happening in Hispanic neighborhoods because they were being called bad hombres. So if I can make a film where I can make people empathize with criminality, if they could look at Tara and say, I would do the same damn thing, then I could spark a conversation after the film from a point of understanding that's never really happened before, because there's people who know desperation and people who've never even sniffed it. And if you can bridge that gap, you can have a conversation that makes sense about it. So I think that was my point in making the film.
Hetty, you get this right from the opening scene of the film that Tara's tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get that and you carry that through, and everything she has to deal with and all the people she has to deal with. She's such a strong presence and tough. How much of that is you?
I think it was much more so before I made the film. I as a young girl running around in LA and just trying to figure things out, you have to, you're dealing with, just life just being, difficult. But also as a female, you deal with extra things that people will try you just because they think it, and they think, oh, a little Asian girl, she let's see, let's see if we can take advantage of her in some ways or whatever, and so I think I don't mean to be tough. I was just really, when I do business or whatever, especially if it's a male figure, I really try to carry myself in a very I don't want to give him any hints that there could be some, so I'm very professional, very just, down to the business. And let's not even talk about what you like to do for a hobby. Let's talk about what we're going to do now to make some money. Right. And so it's very much that type of attitude.
I mean, you have to have the fierceness though, growing up, in certain neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. In the neighborhood that I had to grow up in, we call it the hood, you definitely did have to carry on as a young girl, as a young Asian girl, some persona that you could not be messed with. Mm-hmm. I got really lucky, to be honest with you. I mean, nobody messed with me, but that was probably because I look like an insurance salesperson at 16 years old with my Dockers slacks. They probably thought like, okay, we don't want to mess with the person who's filling out forms for our family or something like that. But I mean, my next question is really about, Hassani brought this up in the conversation around crime and how we define, crime, how we define ourselves if you are a good person, bad person, or deserving of this or that, because of a crime. It's not necessarily a crime when the banks foreclose on the homes that they've sold you on some fraudulent loans that have impacted, Black and brown families, and you're now homeless and hungry and trying to figure out how to put food on your table. The cost of survival, that's the subtitle, of the film. I'd love to hear your perspectives, both of you, on how we address, crime within our own neighborhoods and that absolute push, and try to get somebody else to understand where we're coming from when you're up against, trying to survive. Hetty.
Oh, me first? Oh, okay. This is a very new, the answer isn't black and white,
Yep.
Especially if you grow up from Stockton, you already know that the opportunities for especially, minorities, and not everybody's going to get A's and become a microbiologist, that's not everybody. You can't study your way out. Sometimes some people are wired differently, but the opportunities could be scarce, but you don't want to be a busboy all your life. You don't want to, and especially when you're young, like I said, you want to find ways to get more. And if you come from an environment where a lot of people around you kind of low key doing it, you're not really a stranger to it. It's kind of, I'm pretty sure the mom will be like, don't do it, don't be like da. But you get to a certain age where you make your own decision and you kind of find a balance between what's right and what seems somewhat criminal, but it could just be seen as a shortcut too. Yeah. Did I just come off? Did I make
No. That's exactly I think that's the start of these important conversations, right? How do laws get passed and then, breaking a law in order to survive? I mean, there's got to be some balance to that. And we're going to have Hassani jump in. I know he's probably got stuff swirling.
Yeah, that's one of the most loaded questions I've ever been asked before in my life, because I could talk about it forever. But I think the thing that jumps out to me the most is how much I love the character of Tara, because she's smart enough to understand that if she doesn't do something, it's cyclical. Desperation, poverty, all of the motivation behind criminality is not what people think. If you're from the suburbs and you've never tasted desperation, but you hear about someone embezzling at your father's company, you just immediately assume they're greedy. But you don't assume that their wife is dying and the insurance company won't cover it, or that their child needs a heart transplant and the insurance company won't cover it. So again, like, desperation, it happens everywhere, but it is systemic. Where Tara comes from, where I come from, where you come from, where Hetty comes from. And it doesn't really end. That's the crazy part about it, unless you take extreme measures. And for some people, extreme measures is pushing their body to the limit and going to the NFL. Some people, it's becoming a rap star. Other people, they move into criminality. And again, I think we have to evaluate, because felons specifically in our country are the most just overlooked human beings on the planet. Like, they have no access to good jobs or anything when they come out, even though they've paid their debt. They are just the stigma around them. It's hard to find places to live. I don't know. I really think it's a really tough place to navigate, but it's definitely something that needs reform. And it's something that needs to be addressed in a much bigger way. There has to be a halfway point between doing a crime and going to jail. There has to be at some point, someone who evaluates the situation and sees that the person didn't commit the crime because they were trying to be hurtful. It's that they needed help, you know? And again, trying to make a movie that sparks this conversation, you know, I don't know if I was successful at it, but Lord knows that's where my heart was, because I'm literally the only boy from my block that didn't go to jail or get shot. So,
well, I think you did, you know, yes, you did make a film that somebody wants to talk about it. I want to talk about it.
Well, I'm kind of curious, especially along these lines, as you're showing this at festivals and people are seeing it, what kind of reactions are you getting? And let's split it by race. I mean, what kind of reaction are white viewers? You know, are they like, oh my God, I didn't know this, or are they rejecting it? Or, I mean, what are they? What kind of reaction are you getting from them? What kind of reaction are you getting from Black audiences and Asian American audiences? I mean, what feedback are you getting, and what are they saying?
Well, that's one of the curses of COVID, is that most of the film festivals have been virtual. So I haven't been able to get direct communication from my actual audience. I've been able to communicate with the people who run the film festivals. And to be completely honest, there is a distinction in the way people have been perceiving the film according to race. When it comes to whites, the most evident aspect of their understanding of the film, or what they take from the film, is understanding and empathy. And they're excited about that learning something they didn't know, like being put in that position, like using Tara as a conduit, and then having the film end and just being in her position. There's nothing, you remember a little bit of what you see, a little bit more of what you hear, but you always remember how you felt. And that's the power of movies. And I definitely see that with my white audience a lot. With my Black audience, I feel complete acceptance from them, because it's their story too. It doesn't matter that Tara is Asian, and I find that to be incredibly beautiful. When it comes to an Asian audience, it feels like I get a lot of respect for sharing this side of being Asian, because I think people assume being Asian consists of coming out of the womb and being handed your degree from Yale or Harvard, as you know, before you got your Pampers, and then moving on to some amazing IT job or becoming a doctor. And it's just not that. And I think I can feel that, and I think I receive that from my audiences from all those races. Hetty?
Oh, me. I know, just, you know, like me and Lauren both feel like this movie is really important to just show another side to the model minority story, because that's what's really been put on us by American society. It's like, oh, this is the model minority, but really we're the silent minority. And our representation is limited. And, you know, again, with the Crazy Rich Asian movie, it kind of, I say, you know, it kind of makes it harder on, I mean, I don't want to say it's hard, but it makes it harder on some Asians because they are not crazy rich, or they're not even part of that type of culture. But now, because of the movie being really big, now your general people around you, or that don't really know you, or general public will assume you must be like that. And this movie hopefully will offer a balance to both, because just like with all communities, no one community is monolithic. You know, the Black community, not all Black people are the same, not all Asian people are the same. And so we're just adding another color to the representation.
You had a star rapper, or a successful rap artist, you know, who plays a role in the film, and it was his debut acting, it was his first time acting, I think, and that is Stupid Young. And, you know, here's a rap artist who raps about the violence and the crime and you know, in our growing up with the struggle that we're talking about. But his first role in acting is playing a cop.
Yes.
How did that happen? And how did he agree to? I mean, what did he think about taking on that role?
Right. So Young, man, shout out to Super Young, shout out to Long Beach, Cambodia Town. So I reached out to him before we started the movie. I sent him a poster and I'm like, hey, I wanted him to play like my cousin or something, in the movie, like cousin or friend of my brother's. And he was interested, but unfortunately the scheduling wasn't right. So, he couldn't hop on for the main shoot. After the movie was done, Hisani was like, hey, do you think Young will, let us use one of his songs for the movie? And I'm like, oh, no, let me ask him. So I hit him up again and he gets back to me and I was like, hey, just let you know, this ain't no bootleg project. Let me show you a little clip from the movie. And after I showed him the movie, he was just like, oh, wow, yeah. I mean, do you guys still need a cameo or something? And I'm like, I mean, we're done with the movie, but we can use a cameo. And then I told Hisani and Hisani's like, well, there's some scenes from the scenes in the script that we haven't had a chance to shoot. But it's a cop scene, but I think it's meatier than like the cousin role. And I'm just like, I mean, let me ask. And I told him and he was down. He was down to play. He was very open. He was excited. I think as an artist, you just want to stretch sometimes. And that was him stretching. And he did such a good job.
He was a believable cop, sure.
Yeah, because he knows cops. Yeah, that's why.
That doesn't smell like Chinese food in your car. John.
Well, tell us some stories of how the shoot went. It was a 40-day shoot. Hedy, was it what you expected? How was working with Hisani? And do tell us about this bike.
The bike. I hope no little kids are listening, but man, my crotch hurt. That bike, Hisani made me work that bike. It would make me go uphill and then telling me I'm looking too slow on camera on the bike. Can you go a little faster? I gave it, I tried my best. This is my first feature film. And I really leaned on Hisani's coaching, really just coaching, not from all aspects of the business, from producing to the writing, to the acting, he's a great mentor and he would explain to me, what do I care about lighting? But he would just be like, yeah, Hedy, so we're going to light you this way because, the way it cuts on your face. And I'm just like, oh, you just soak up the game when you're around him. That's just how it is. So it's been, has it been difficult? Yes, because we are doing it independently and that is pretty hardcore, but this is a passion project. And we have a great cast and crew, and a lot of this came together based on their passion and favors. So,
Hisani, how did the filming go? Was it as you expected?
Filming was kind of amazing. I grew way closer to my cast and crew from pre-production until now. Even we're growing closer as the film festival circuit continues. I think one of my favorite things about this crew is we had fun. We were down to business, but we had a really good time. It was a very small crew. For 17 days, we had a crew of about 8 people, maybe even 7. And it was a pretty close split. It was close to being half women, half men. And the remaining 23 days was just myself, my DP, Alberto Triana, and my producer, MJ Del Rosario, who pulled double duty as a script supervisor. And then Hedy was in front of the camera doing her thing with whatever actors were in the scene. So we had a really good time. I think in a lot of ways it paid off because, you play telephone with people sometimes. You say something to someone, they say it to someone else, and you lose it. It's really hard to do that when it's only 3 people on set. And we got to shoot the film because I'm an owner-operator. Alberto and we own our own cameras. We own our own lights. We did have sponsorships from companies like Intelitech and Snyder Optics, but the equipment was ours until we were done with the film. So we could literally shoot, look at what we have, and then shoot some more if we wanted it to be better or different. And I think Hedy did a really, really wonderful job. She really knew her character pretty quick, and we had fun with that. Her supporting cast, we strategized to have her supporting cast be veteran actors because this was Hedy's first really big dive into acting. And to hold up a feature film being in almost every scene is a really tough task. So We surrounded her with Lena Yi, who was an incredible actress who played her mother, Wavy. We surrounded her with Ski Carr, who played the antagonist, if you want to call him that, Lalo, and then J. Teddy Garces, who played Hector. Everybody kind of created this protective cocoon of safety around Hetty when she needed it. And of course she did the same as well, because by the end of the film, she just knew what she was doing. And the last scene we shot for this film was with Young, who was kind enough to donate 2 major songs, Cold Nights and Mando, to the film. And I just have a sick sense of humor, so I thought it'd be dope to have him play a police officer. And I remember Dr. Dre playing a police officer in Training Day. It seems like a rite of passage for rappers to play a cop. If you could play a cop, you could play anything. Right. And he thought it was kind of funny when we spoke on the phone. I think he got my sixth sense of humor and he was into it. On set, working with Young was like working with anybody. It was fun. He was really excited to take direction. He did it really well. And then Hetty was so in the groove by that point that it was kind of an easy night. Like, we started a little bit late and still finished early. And that was something that's uncommon with filming. And that happened a lot on Takeout Girl. And I would say it was such a special set that when something would inevitably go wrong, as it does on film sets, nobody panicked. Everyone just saw it as the universe enforcing some sort of rewrite. We took it as a sign of we're supposed to do something better. And then we went out and did that. And to have Hetty, who based this on her life, be so flexible with it and who's putting, 40 days of her time and effort and driving back and forth to LA, but she was so down for whatever changes the film needed. Same thing with my DP. Like, we would start shooting coverage and then he would just randomly pick up the camera and move, and we'd be like, wait, hold right there. And we'd reshoot the coverage because we found something better. It was like searching for magic. And now that I'm done with the film and great things are starting to happen for us, we're starting to find our way in Hollywood, I may never have that sort of freedom on set again. I may never be able to just fly by the seat of my pants. So I think it'll always be a special experience for me.
If you're joining us live, we want you to be interactive. You can send in your questions or comments as well for Hetty and Hisani. It's interesting, Hetty, you mentioned something about cultures and ethnicities not being monolithic. When you tell a story, especially if it's about like a Chinese family, usually those stories will kind of stay pretty contained to a Chinese family. But in Takeout Girl, Tara is surrounded by people of many different races and ethnic backgrounds. Her love interest is Black. Her side hustle job, the drug dealer guy, is Latino. The Chinese family. I mean, was that intentional for the characters to be multicultural?
I think it's just a reflection of the new generation. See, my parents are immigrants from China. And when they first got to America, their support group was in San Francisco Chinatown, Oakland Chinatown. And that generation tend to stick to their own a little bit more because of language barriers and, and what have you of the time. But I feel like the new generation of Asians that are born here, you go to school with different ethnicities, you know what I'm saying? Like, you go to parties with different ethnicities. Our world is just a little bit more bigger than our parents. And so I didn't think of it as, I'm going to purposely make it like this. It was just a reflection of a young girl in this time, navigating her way around South Central LA. Did I make sense? Did I answer that question okay?
It makes super sense. Okay. Again, this is like taking a page out of my life. It's real. You just don't really see it, or these stories aren't necessarily being told, being bought, in Hollywood mainstream. But thanks to you two, that's maybe, this is the door that opens for these types of minority stories to be told. Hisani, did you have anything to add to the fact that, the characters were multi-ethnic, multicultural, multiracial?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got plenty. You know, man, you can tell already I can talk. But I think it just comes down to poverty doesn't see color. Poverty and desperation hits everybody the same. So like showing a neighborhood where they're all kind of suffering. They're all in a crappy situation. The Latino characters are suffering. And you can tell that because they're already doing whatever it takes. And then you have Nate, who is the love interest, if you want to call him that, in the film, who has obviously been through the ringer and has settled into whatever position he can hold that will help him pay his bills. And then you have Tara and her family, who are essentially just stuck in the rat race. They are stuck in that gerbil wheel and cannot get out, which in a lot of ways is one of the worst fates to have, is to know that you don't even have a second to think or everything falls apart, let alone to restructure your life and try and do something different. And I think the film reflects that. And what I love about it is I think it's done in such a subtle way. Like we're not like pointing a big red arrow at all of the diversity. We try to do it as organically and as authentically as possible.
There's a scene early in the movie, and obviously it's a big point of the movie, where Tara goes to this store to make this food delivery and is told to bring it in the back. That's where the money is. That's where she'll get paid. And she's like, no way on earth am I going back there. And eventually she does. And the story unfolds from that. Had she not, because I would have been terrified about going to the back room of some strange place where clearly something weird's going on. Had she not gone back there, had she said, well, to heck with this, we're going to just do without the $42 or whatever it was. Do you think that they're, obviously I'm asking about a fictional character, but I mean, do you think that character's life would have perhaps evolved in that direction from another way? In other words, maybe kind of destined for trying to find something that would, or taking advantage of something that would, give her and her family another option? Or do you think it might have gone completely different and she would have, ended up running her mom's restaurant as her mom had to retire or something? Any thoughts on that, Hetty?
I think eventually she would have always tried some type of shortcut, because when you're in that environment, it's just, those are the opportunities that are around you. And it didn't have to be from the guy in the back. It could have been when she could have gotten a little older and maybe her friends are already started doing it and then she gets involved. Or maybe her brother, something, and as you can tell from, Lauren's character is already a street guy. He just tries to, you try not to bring in the other family, but you already know, that this is not brand new. This is not a new concept. It's always been there and it's always going to be there if you choose to pursue it, and so that scene really just jump-started her on that path. But I think eventually she would have, schemed some way or other to make a little bit more than what she was already making, and there's only so many jobs you can take. You could work double shifts and stuff and you still can't make enough to meet your month's, expenses. So what are you going to do to supplement your, your expenses, your bills, your income? And so when opportunities come like that, it doesn't have to be like that specifically, but you will consider it, especially if everybody around you've been doing it a little bit, where they did it for a little bit and got out or did it for a really long time. It's not a new concept.
I think one of the biggest gaps in empathy and knowledge in this country is often not realizing it's not just the lack of sufficient income, it's the debt that people are dealing with. And you see her dealing with that as throughout.
May I jump in? Because you
Please.
touched on something really important with that question. And the thing is, we work really hard to establish Tara as brilliant. When it comes to navigating the streets, she's like Mozart, but also we show her at school. And clearly she's great enough at school for people to want to pay for her help. So my answer to that question is yes and no. And that's a really important answer because there are so many brilliant people just stuck in that gerbil wheel. Like, I think if Tara I can't imagine a world in which Tara wouldn't have faced her fears of going into that room, because consistently throughout the throughout the film, when faced with terrifying things, she really does tackle it head on. And I think that's what makes her special. But if she didn't go in that room, I think the potential for Tara to go on and do the exact same hustle, except on Wall Street, were very, very high. And like Michelle was talking about, like the difference between illegal and legal things. She brought up the foreclosure thing. Well, let's talk about banking. You know, that's a perfect avenue for a character like Tara, because she would have killed it. Just because of her savvy, her not intimidation factor, but her ability to be unintimidated, she would have really killed it. And once again, I bring that up because I'm sitting here as a filmmaker, having made a film, won a bunch of awards this year, but I am not the best filmmaker from my neighborhood. There were kids I made films with from age 12 that are now spending the rest of their life in jail because they had to eat. Like, the potential we leave here in America, the potential we leave just on the floor, in the dirt, or tossed in the trash is unbelievable. So the next time, I hope people take from this film, the next time they bump into someone who is lower class or poor, or even a former criminal, like, there's a hell of a lot of potential in that person too.
I think, it's interesting. We begin by talking about crime, but I look at it like, where are the resources? When you get lower and lower and lower, off the privilege pole, let's say you came here as an immigrant, or your parents didn't speak the language. I mean, it gets that much harder to get resources in order to become something, or not become, poor. You have Tara and her family who they're business owners. They have a restaurant, right? But even healthcare is something that is scary. Her mom is ill and won't go see a doctor because she's scared of the bills, and the bills are racking up, like John was talking about, debt. Right now, small business owners are hurting, and how timely that it was central, to the storyline in this film. But Hetty, if you can even talk about this, like, yeah, how the struggle, like how hard it is for working class families to even just make it,
Right.
Like, you could be a business owner and still struggle.
Mom and pop, my parents, they got into the restaurant business because eventually, they don't have an education. My dad, his education level, after middle school, he had to go, part of the Cultural Revolution, he had to do other things. And my mom's education is only up to high school. So coming to America, it's kind of like, what opportunities are going to be there for people like them? Their English isn't so good. So who's going to really hire them? So they have to start working for themselves. And, a mom and pop Chinese restaurant is one of them. But just because you're a business owner doesn't mean that you're well off and you don't have any worries, because you have to pay a lot of things before you pay yourself. You have employees to feed, so in our movie, we have Crystal. So we have to make sure that we make enough to pay her at least, before we pay ourselves, the family. And so we're working really hard. Just a long time ago, my dad says it like this, he said, you could work for somebody else, right? And you get a salary, or you could work for yourself and you work 24/7 for it. But sometimes the salary you make is just the same as for working for somebody else. But I'd rather work for me, but it's not like it's more money. It's just the same salary you would get working for somebody else. You're just doing it for yourself. And even then with businesses, it's very unstable. In restaurant business, you can make a profit one day and the next week it's dry and you just go, you just go into debt a little bit. So,
and who gets access to the PPE loans or PPP loans, whatever they are these days?
Starbucks.
John.
Actually, my favorite story was it was some Ayn Rand Foundation or organization that got some of the PPP money. And of course, they are the arch opponents of government spending and such. I want to wind back just a little bit, and it's the same question for each of you. How did you get into your career? I mean, what was this something you had dreamed about doing? Sonny, you were talking about making films when you were a kid. Did you see yourself doing this, or was that, was that a step on the road of this, or was that just something all the kids in the neighborhood did? So start with you first, and then Hetty, how did you get here?
I made my first film with my friends when I was 12 years old. And pretty much that same group of friends made a feature film a year until we were like freshmen in college. And I was lucky. I was very, very lucky. I grew up in the inner city of Milwaukee, which is the most segregated city in America. Forbes has rated it the #1 worst place in America to grow up Black. Again, I'm the only boy from my block to make it out without going to jail or getting killed. And a big part of that has to do with being adopted by a professional photographer named David Vanderveen. When my mother fell ill, couldn't take care of me, we became homeless for a little bit. He kind of took me in. And I think seeing that you can make a living from the arts is what really changed my life. And he knew I had an interest in it because of the films me and his son would make together. He just started nurturing it. It's like, it was the early 90s, I think. And he would show me Quentin Tarantino's films. He would show me Robert Rodriguez's films and say, this guy made this film by selling his body to science. Like, he makes films like you. He makes it with nothing. So you could do that one day. And then all the while teaching me technique and lighting and what the equipment's supposed to do, lensing, composition, post editing of pictures, all of which translated really well into filmmaking. But I lived in a place that's very industrial. It is not a traditional choice where I'm from to choose to go into anything Hollywood. You get like a job at Master Lock and you just kind of call it a day. But my best friend and my group of friends who are all athletes, we make films. And one day one of them got ballsy enough to say, why don't we try and get this film to play in a theater? And I'm like, shut up. Like, this isn't going to happen. And they were like, well, what's the harm in asking? So they go to the local movie theater. They come back with their chins down and looking sad. And I'm like, I told you they were going to say no. And then they turned it around on me and were like, you're an idiot. They said yes. So every summer from that point on, we would play our movie in theaters for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and charge admission. We would get the box office and the theater would get the concessions. It was a dine-in theater, so the concessions were much higher. And the local news covered us and would cover us every year. And the push we would get from, even though they were terrible movies, because we had like 17-year-olds playing the president, we still had a really good audience because people would come and watch our action drama and just laugh from beginning to end. And it made us a good money. We didn't have to get summer jobs. So, and it was from then on out, it was just battling traditionalism, if you want to call it that. Like, people telling me, okay, this is fun and all, but when are you going to get a real job? and just kind of sticking to my guns on that. So.
Eddie, how about you? How did you become the filmmaker?
How I got into this life? Ooh.
Yeah, and why?
I think, growing up, I've always been into movies, stories, and I forget, I posted this quote before. I think it's either by an artist. He said, art is to console those who are broken by life. And art to me was really important because it showed me something else, another perspective, growing up. And my parents were always working. And so, really the TV really raised me and my little brother. And I had an interest in, but because nobody in my family is in this business, I didn't know how to express myself. I only can think like, oh, acting. If I want to, tell great stories, I should act, right? And I was just really basic with it. And I moved to LA and I discovered that, really I like acting, but I really just love the overall business of storytelling. And I think that's how I got into, wanting to write and, wanting to produce and just, I see it as an overall thing. It's not like just acting, I kind of evolved from that.
I can't believe we've already gone through almost an hour talking with you both. I feel I can go another hour, but I have to ask this question because it was part of, my research when I came across your movie of a situation that is happening, I think, in a lot of places, and maybe not even just the United States, but a rise in Asian violence and racism, Asian violence and racism due to COVID-19. And we all know, what the president had done to make that even worse. Hetty, you brought up, Chinatown and growing up in Asian neighborhoods. And with the violence, there seems to be a racial divide. There seems to be racial tension. And so if the residents of Chinatown or even, older Asian generations were to see Takeout Girl, what would you want them to understand? And then what is some advice that you would give to our communities of color who seem to kind of think about the racism as if, it's so focused on either Asian and Black or Asian and Latino, or this divisiveness that's happening. Whereas I see it, as the bigger stuff where the racism is institutionalized.
Right.
Instead of it being like, Asians are racist against Blacks or Blacks are racist against Asians, or this violence is isolated in this way.
Right. So, if you only look at it just with like very just at face value, you go like, oh, this happened, this Asian person was, let's say, attacked by a Black person. That must mean, but this happens a lot in Chinatown, so it must be, the Black community doesn't like Asians or something like that. And I don't really see it like that, because just like with Black on Black crime, it's kind of like, is it really Black on Black crime, or is it just the people in that area messing with each other? Because because when Asians bang on each other, you don't call it Asian on Asian crime. But I guess there's never been enough of us for the government to call it Asian on Asian crime. Because I feel like and the reason I also say Asians are monolithic is because I've met Asian people who came from the Midwest, and they grew up in a predominantly white town. They've experienced racism, So it's not a racism based on race thing. It's just really where everybody's at. And then, like Hisani used this word before, tribalism. It's tribalism, and everybody just if you're different, you're different, and you will get picked on. But because of the statistics and stuff, something that will attribute it to race, when it's not really race. It's just when you're a minority of minority, whatever color you are, you will experience a lot of crap.
All right. You have the best questions, Michelle, because they really get me going. I could write a book on this, and I'm trying to find the best place to start. And for me, I just go back to my mother. My mother taught me how to appreciate people of all races and why. The beauty of their culture, why their culture is needed to enrich who I am. And as much as we've seen an uptick in violence and a disconnect between races a little bit, as much as we've seen an uptick in that, it is not the majority. Like, I feel comfortable saying that we may not adore one another, but overall there's a live and let live sort of mentality amongst Latino, Black, and Asian. And the media tends to sensationalize the terrible things that are happening because it makes them money. Because this film, and I have to go back to my personal experiences, this film would not have happened without the collaboration of Black, Brown, and Yellow. And in a really big way. I mean, from Hetty coming to me, from me being able to internalize it and make it my own, to the sacrifices all of the actors had to make it happen, and all the musicians. Like, Takeout Girl is a testament both on screen and off screen that we're a lot more alike than we would like to admit in most cases. As a matter of fact, my career is dedicated to telling stories about a character having their ethics tested and having and depicting their perilous journey from toward figuring out who they are, where they stand in this world, and trying to take care of their basic needs. And through showing those stories, I want to show how similar we really are, because we're all pursuing the same thing. If you think about it, at the core, Takeout Girl is a story about mamas. Like, Wavy is my mom too. The fact that Hetty and I came together, mashed our stories together, and we think so highly of each other at the end of what is considered one of the most arduous artistic journeys you can take is a sign that we are alike. We can get along in a really big way, and not only get along, thrive together. So I know that's something my mother would be proud of. I know that's something Wavy would be proud of. And yeah, I would just say, don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. Because in my neighborhood, with all of those super predators, if any of those men saw an Asian woman being attacked or an old Asian man being attacked, whoever did it, black, brown, yellow, white, doesn't matter, would have been stomped out instantly, because ethics are across the board. They weren't bad people. They were desperate people. And if they saw something bad happening, they would stop it. I've seen it. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah. And I would also like to add, because, I know for the Asian community, because of the uprising racism globally, it's not just happening in America. I think I read something about a lot of Asians in France, Paris. There's like a lot of hits on them now because of the virus. And, and I know a lot of people, when they're hurting, they're just trying to figure out, why is this happening? And they try to reach for the easiest answer, but the easiest answer isn't the most truthful or the bigger picture answer, right? And I would tell, to people who are hurting, that despite everything that's happening to you, not everybody who is your color is your kind, you know what I'm saying? And not, everybody who is your kind is your color. And me and Hassani is a testimony to that.
I agree.
This all kind of comes around to whether in these days you can be an optimist or a pessimist about economic problems, racial justice issues and such. And when so many forces have it as a self-interest to get you to point at someone else to find the problem, it's at the moment I tend to be an optimist. And I tend to be optimistic these days. I tend to be pessimistic these days about that particular issue, because it has become, I sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I'm really just talking basic kind of economic self-interest of some folks. Some folks definitely have an interest in keeping the crazy going and keeping the demonizations going. So since we're close to running out of time, I do want to ask, and this is the most hack question that you guys probably are asked at every single appearance you make, but I do want to make sure we get it in there, because this film is so interesting. I want to know what you're doing next, or what you're hoping to work on next. So for each of you, what's on your plate now, or what are you trying to get started, or what are you already working on for your next project?
For me, I'm working on this South Carolina horror story with my friend, because he's from there, and it's based on this local folklore about the Boo Hag. And so I hope that we continue to, advance with that project. Mm-hmm.
I am working on a short film called Blunt, and it is the story of how my girlfriend and I are in an interracial relationship, and her parents disapproved of it, but how we definitely ease those tensions. So I can't wait to jump into production on that. And I really hope it's something we can talk about once it's done.
Oh, we will. I love both your work. And quite honestly, I hope that Takeout Girl becomes a series on Netflix or something. I think it should,
We're pitching a prequel.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, we got a prequel too. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we're
I mean,
pitching
all
a
this stuff.
prequel. We're pitching a prequel that stars Wavy just arriving in America and her meeting a young Lalo.
Oh, oh man. Oh, that's so good. I got goosebumps because, we didn't even touch on the big surprise of the film, surrounding the plot and Wavy's character.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have to see the film. And the last question is really, I know that you're doing the festival circuit stuff. Really hope that we are able to, get the general public to see it. But if you could talk again, do we go to the website? Where do we find more information on how we can catch it?
You can find us on Instagram at Takeout Girl Feature Film. You can find us on Facebook at Takeout Girl Feature Film. You can find me on Instagram at Hisani J or on Twitter at Hisani, and that's HISONNI. And Hetty.
Oh, mine is Juliet Must Die. It's a little play off of the Jet Li movie with Aaliyah, Romeo Must Die. So yeah, you can find me at Juliet Must Die. Mm-hmm.
You both are so cool. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Commonwealth Club and sharing your film, Takeout Girl.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for joining us. Happy holidays, by the way. And I know we're trying really hard to stay healthy and safe, so continue to do so. We got some great programs. Actually, our last 2 programs is tomorrow. And so I'll leave John with the last words to let you know. No?
We have one next week as well. We've got 3 more.
I'm sorry,
programs
we got
coming
3,
up.
yes.
Yeah. In fact, find out, you can find all of the past Michelle Meow shows at the Commonwealth Club and our future ones, including a film screening tomorrow of a Don't Ask, Don't Tell documentary, Sarah McBride interview next week. We're talking with people who are supporting a group that is trying to convince Governor Gavin Newsom to appoint an African-American woman to succeed Senator Kamala Harris in the Senate. So lots of interesting stuff coming up before the end of the year. Find it all at commonwealthclub.org/MMS. Have a great and safe weekend, everybody.